There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me, as always, my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How you doing today, buddy?
Fucking sweating my ass off in here. It's awful.
Why are you sweating so horribly?
Because it's like 112 degrees with 400% humidity up here.
Oh, so you've died and gone directly to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Pretty much.
So we're also
Satan is not a man with horns.
Speaking of
fun fact, Satan
is a Scotsman who is here with us in the virtual studio today. How you doing today, Novel Bro?
Not bad. I'm actually quite happy that the kettle finished boiling just before the intro ended, so I'm just sitting stirring the teacup.
Okay, all right, good. You're okay with me comparing you to Satan then? I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's not going to be the first time I've been called the fucking devil, so yeah, I'm pretty used to it.
Oh, well, see, we're not in a relationship. I didn't call you the devil. I called you Satan. There's a huge difference. Huge.
Fair play, then hail me.
You thought this whole time I was just using it as a war campaign greeting. I was secretly dog whistling that you're actually the devil. So anyway, we're here today to discuss a very interesting storyline on the Gospel of Comics today. We're here to talk about Marvel 1602. Ayrton, do you want to explain to the people what Marvel 1602 is?
Sure. Basically, it's the Marvel Universe if superheroes showed up in the Elizabethan era in the year 1602.
Would you call that the Victorian era?
And then it gets a little fucky at the end.
That's the
Victorian era. What?
No, I'm asking Novel Bro. He's a historical expert.
Yeah, no, that was definitely not the Victorian era. The Victorian era would have been the 1800s. We're at least 200 years before then. And one could easily call this the Elizabethan era, but the era just after it, that King James fellow is my favourite Scottish king of all time. He was, yeah, honestly, the guy has got one hell of a fucking resume, put it that way.
Oh, well, he has a resume in this story as well. It involves an organization that, most people will never expect. So, yeah, but we'll get into that as we get into the storyline. It's actually a pretty quick reveal. I've got the first issue pulled up on screen. Let's go through the credits real quick. Marvel 1602 Part 1, in which we are introduced to some of our featured players. Writer Neil Gaiman, Andy Kubert, illustrator, Richard Isanove, I believe, digital painting, which coloring, Todd Klein on lettering. I'm guessing digital painting is also inking. And you have Scott McCowan on covers. First thing I want to say, I absolutely love the style of covers on these books.
Oh yeah,
it's a very age appropriate, well, not era appropriate rendition of the paintings and the textures and the things that were in vogue in that particular timeline. As far as I know. Again, we have Novel Bro on here. He is the resident historian, especially European history. So we're how far off base am I on that? Is this age era appropriate for the style of artwork and whatnot?
I would say quite close if you're considering frescoes, murals, and with the color schemes as well. They're definitely a lot more modern. So we're talking late Renaissance era anyway, because like I hate recalling a sad moment of history, but the fall of Constantinople marked the very beginning of the Renaissance.
When the Ottomans started to rise to power, right?
Yes, yes, the cunts that love their trains.
Look, man,
An entire empire based off of furniture.
I listened to entirely too much Immortal Technique and Army of Army of the what is it? Army of the Pharaohs, Jedi Mind Tricks. Basically the Hebrew Israelite rap groups.
Yeah.
They love the Ottomans. They're their favorite people.
Fucking
I'll
swear to God.
take a shot.
Fucking God.
I'll take a shot for Constantinople.
Absolutely. The queen of all cities. But anyway, I think we're getting just a little bit off base. It's like we're talking about styles, yes? Yes, I'd say it is very age specific, especially when you're talking multi-layered artwork. You know, foreground, middle ground, background, with plenty in between and plenty going on. And yeah, I'd say the art style is quite fitting. However, they have tried to modernize it to, bring more detail to the characters to make you think like, yes, that is, who
Right.
it's supposed to be. That is supposed to be,
Right. So
Well, the color palette choice is pretty close too, right? To like the old portraits from that time frame.
Yeah, and when you look at the clothing that they're wearing and stuff like that, like the stuff going on, and I've forgotten what they call that because I'd like to try and focus
Impressionism?
earlier on in history when I'm looking at stuff. But yeah. I think at least in terms of muralism, at least, and there's going to be plenty more art movements that would come out after the 1600s, sadly. But
right.
Yeah.
the 1600s was still quite a booming time in terms of artistic progression, but it was all still mostly done within the church. But by this point, the church had made many friends and scholars and artistic visionaries throughout their time. By this point, I mean, come on, I think the Palazzo in Sicily had people outside the church, muralized everything there. And I think Michelangelo did something there, but I cannot remember. But it's the same for Florence and Venice and stuff like that. The Doges wanted to show a little bit of grandeur, so outside of their religious magistrate positions or whatever, they would ask the simple common maestros to do the work.
Well, before we get too deep into the minutia of the era, as Ayrton described, this is a book that takes place as if the Marvel Universe basically actually started in 1602. And to be a little more honest with the storytelling, technically the Marvel Universe would have had to have started in, what is it, 1587?
If you
Yeah.
were to start like the story, like the first like kind of story from there, I
The
think it probably
apex.
would
Let's
be
not
make
let's
sense
not
to go
spoil
back to-
let's not spoil it just yet. But the apex incident that created this universe, um, or at least mutated this universe, so to speak, and we'll get to that. But in this time period,
The one part
superheroes.
I don't like about this story.
There's a lot I don't like about this story from a comic book perspective, but like I said, I wanted to have Novel Bro on because he understands like the historical aspects of it, and he can give us an idea of when certain scenes aren't quite playing out or are playing out to true to the time, and the actual historical characters that are mentioned. Just wait till we get to Virginia Dare. I'm assuming he's got at least a 10 to 15 minute rant about that.
Yeah, we'll see how the anachronisms play out. But yes, I think you'll find me impressed with a lot, but you'll find me depressed with a
Go ahead, Ayrton. You were going to say something? Or not?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. So, as you described, this is, like we said, Marvel taking place in 1602. So, where should we actually start with this? Obviously, you've got a lot of introductions in this first chapter, and we're not going to go through each and every one, but I will, move to the first three character introductions at one time in this first issue because obviously, if it's the first three characters shown in an issue, these are going to be important people. And this is actually where my problems with this story as a comic book start. So this should be a fun little exploration. This is going to be a multiple part series, isn't it? We never finish those, but this one
Yeah.
this one can't be more than like 4 episodes long. So I think we might do it. Anyway,
Well, unless we get into that story stuff, which I like a lot better.
Man, I hate your audio right now. Like, I know you bought a lot of things to make it better, and it's just bad. It makes me so unhappy. Your audio is the reason I drink here.
I'm kind of a tiptoe on this one.
Come on, there's a lot of reasons you drink.
Yes, but your audio is the current one.
Oh, okay.
All right, so right away we're introduced to this era's version of Nick Fury and Stephen Strange. Basically, the Master of Whispers, the lead of the Queen's intelligence, Nick Fury, and the Queen's physician, Dr. Stephen Strange. They're obviously shifted to meet the era as far as Neil Gaiman suspects, and we're introduced to basically Pennywise Queen Elizabeth as she's dying from consumption. Is the only thing that I can assume is the Red Death, which the Red Death was prominent in the 1600s. I'm assuming, right? They didn't even have germ theory then, right?
No, they certainly did not.
Okay.
It wasn't too good a time for them there. And like I say, if she had health problems then, she'd probably look a lot worse than that. But then again, the makeup, as they're trying to make it, it's supposed to cover a lot. But
Right.
I'm going to be honest, I don't think she was that unhealthy at that age.
Well, as we'll find out later, she has to be somewhat unhealthy to move the plot along. There has to be a fear of her imminent demise for the story to work as a whole. Now, we're introduced immediately to the fact that the Templars are still a prominent organization, that mutants and superpowered beings exist in this universe, and they are considered witch breed. A very interesting term for them, especially given the era's, hatred of witches. It fits. It works, right? Like, so that's one thing that I'll give the
especially in religious circles.
yeah, I'll give that kind of a pass just on the nose. Ayrton, I don't know if you have any thoughts about the whole witch breed thing. I think it's a nice way to explain away.
One thing that
Go ahead.
it is, it's a little bit, from what I understand, though, in England, a bit of a misconception where I think it's like 80% of people accused of witches at that time were actually acquitted.
Yeah, because it's just mostly people like that. I don't like that guy. There's something off about him. He must be a fucking witch. Next thing you know, he gets put on fucking trials. He just doesn't like me because he keeps fucking staring at me. He expects me to say something like platitudes to him, but I'm not gonna fucking say anything to him.
So what you're saying is cancel culture was more civilized in the 1600s than it is now.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Twitter was a mistake. Follow me on Twitter, guys.
What does that say about humanity? We're more barbaric now than we were 400 fucking years.
Which is saying a lot.
But this whole introduction here, which is pulled off masterfully. Don't get me wrong. I will always find a way to praise Neil Gaiman's writing. And the interior artwork in this book is, if nothing but stellar. I mean, I love every panel, even with the weird face shapes and everything. Um, again, I never have a problem like figuring out who's who on a page, even though I've never seen these iterations of these characters before. Uh, now, when you get into
Even
some
the
of the
little etiquettes and stuff.
what now?
Even those little etiquettes as well between them, and like how they how they hail each other and stuff like that. I liked how they included the Madame for Queen Elizabeth, because that was one of those little things that she liked being called.
Yeah,
Like that's quite good. What I like to call good research in history. Like they did put a little bit of work in on that, I think.
I have a stinking suspicion that Neil Gaiman has a penchant for historical writing and historical fiction. I don't know if you know this about him, Novel Bro. Ayrton, you might, but Neil Gaiman is actually famed for having a huge feud with Todd McFarlane that spiraled into a lawsuit over the ownership of several characters that Neil Gaiman co-created in the Spawn universe. Uh, most of which revolving around the Archangel Angela, or the Angel Angela, who eventually gets moved over to Marvel Comics, a medieval version of the Hellspawn itself, Tony Twist, I believe. You remember that, Ayrton?
Yeah, we've covered that a couple times on the show, haven't we?
Obviously, your audio being the reason I drink, I don't remember. But
Medieval Spawn, though.
yeah, yeah, Spawn on horseback with a badass spiked sword.
I like it. We might need to take a look at that on another occasion, but please make a mental note of that.
Ayrton, make a physical note of that, please. You like how I did that? But no, this actually brings about my first problem with this story as a whole. You've probably heard me go off on this before in another form or fashion, but with this pretense, with this setup, they had two very distinct choices, and they chose the easier option. They used basically time shifted versions of existing characters. And we all know my feeling on being unoriginal with your creations. You don't get to use a Nicholas Fury 300 and something years before Nick Fury was born. I'm sorry. You don't get to do it. You don't get to have Stephen Strange and well, maybe Stephen Strange and Cleo, the Time Stone, that shit. It kind of makes sense, but you don't get to have just direct analogs of these characters. I think that they really should have gone the extra mile and worked a little harder to make us a little more invested in figuring out the who's who and who's corollary. It would have made for better ancillary material later on down the line. Like, Peter
Yeah.
Parker is quite possibly.
I love that arc. I
Uh,
love that arc. I
it's
really do.
it's quite possibly the most offshot version. And if you take a minute and you think about it, when we meet Virginia Dare later, what they did with her character is unique. It fits the theme. It drives the plot. I mean, she's basically the walking MacGuffin of the story. And take it or leave it, but it does show that there is creativity in creating characters. All you have to say is that, well, now the age of. I guess we kind of have to go ahead and spoil the premise. So, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read this yet. Cover your ears for the next minute or two. But the overall premise is that something happened that wasn't supposed to, and the age of heroes started 300 years before it was supposed to. I don't see how that translates into having a Stephen Strange, a Nick Fury, and a direct corollary
and
for people that actually exist in the current Marvel universe.
and that's the part that I don't like about it. Now, if they would have just presented it as like, oh, what would happen if these characters existed in this time?
Yes.
frame,
Yes,
it
that.
would be so
like
much
time
better.
machine shit, you know.
But well, here's the thing: they frame it as this wasn't supposed to happen. This world was supposed to continue along an evolutionary path that would lead it to be an almost mirror duplicate of the average 616 universe. Instead of
Well, they
presenting it
called this the 616 universe at one point, didn't
right,
they?
yeah, I think so. But all they had to
Yeah,
do
I think
to tell,
Uatu called it that too. Strange.
but and I get it that leads up to the main, the main arc of the overall story. Don't get me wrong, but if they would have just presented this as an Elseworld and had, the final, what's the word I'm looking for? The final plot device,
Confrontation.
the final confrontation or antagonism or whatever. If they would have had that be something just a little different that allowed this to be its own independent universe where this was supposed to happen, I could forgive having
Yeah.
an analog for Nick Fury. You don't get Nick Fury
Right.
300 years earlier just because the Age of Heroes started early. Fuck you.
And certainly not with the title of knight. That's for sure. If he'd been given a knighthood back then, it would have been seen as a fucking joke, and he would have been paraded around like some sort of fucked up fucking sideshow.
Why?
Yes, look, I gave the monkey a knighthood.
No, why would he be a joke of the night? Nick Fury's pretty badass as a character.
It can be, but back then it would have been seen as something similar to fucking Caligula bloody making his fucking horse consul, you know?
Chad Middleton in the
Yeah,
chat says,
the idea.
real quick, Chad Middleton in the chat says, any witch hunts? Absolutely there are. No references to Sinister as far as I know. And write a note on that tree. I believe that was for you, Eric.
Write a note on that tree.
When I told you to make a physical note, I'm
I
not
thought they would have said chisel in stone.
Well, I mean, that is your main method of communication. The shipping on those things is outrageous.
It really is. I think I need to switch to carrier pigeons.
Are we good with Fury and Strange and Elizabeth's introduction? Can we move on from that?
Yeah.
Yes, because I'll give Elizabeth this. Like her descendant, she did like to bring people from all corners of the world. She wasn't as prejudiced as the people outside, so to speak. So yeah, they would have fit. They would have fit if it's the Elizabeth I'm thinking of.
All right. So where do we want to go? Like, what do we want to look at next? Because the first issue is always the longest.
I want to touch on. Well, I want to touch on what I think they could have done a little bit better than that time travel bullshit.
Okay, that's why I asked if you wanted to move on.
Yeah. So, what I think they should have done is made the focus of the story the Knights Templar, like the Templar treasure. That would have been a much better MacGuffin, in my opinion, for the whole overarching story.
Artifacts in that treasure happen to be able to, do powerful things. That could be a good premise.
I like what they did with the Templar's treasure. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I like what they did with it. They should have just stretched it out and made that the full MacGuffin of the whole story.
Yeah, that I've definitely
the unveiling of that particular character, and then maybe have the wrap up issue be his come to Jesus moment, literally. Right. Without spoiling what that is, let's just leave it there. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
All right.
I like how you called it coming to Jesus moment. I like that.
Yeah. So the next part we encounter, I'm not going to show because it's kind of inconsequential, but you see Angel in this universe has been captured. He's a witch breed. He has wings, even though he looks like a human. And he's been captured. I don't think they don't reveal it yet, but he's been captured, and he's just kind of going over the fact that he's going to be burned alive as a witch breed. But then we get to probably my favorite character in this entire series. I think you guys know where I'm going with this.
No, Enrique.
Or wait a
No,
minute. Is
no, Matthew.
that Murdoch?
Oh, Murdoch.
Yeah.
I got it right. I got it right first try. Yay!
Yeah. So we go to the tavern, which I mean, you kind of have to have in this kind of story. It has to have that
Well,
tavern scene, and you find a blind singer, wearing a red bandana over his eyes, named Matthew. Big surprise, that turns out to be Matt Murdock, the Daredevil, and he's singing a song about the Four of the Fantastic, which was, you'll come to find out, a seafaring vessel in which four adventurers supposedly died on. So that's kind of a little bit of a nod to the fact that the Fantastic Four exist. You've got Daredevil, Matt Murdock, and then you see this kid sitting around fucking with a spider until somebody just reaches over and crushes it with their beer stein. And then Nick Fury comes and shows that it's Peter Parker, Peter Parquar, whatever. There's a Q in
Parkour, I think.
Parkar, yeah.
I hate it. I hate it as well. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I like that they don't immediately just give us Peter Parker being bitten by a spider. I like that they just kind of give us that false start of, oh, it's Peter Parker with a spider. And then somebody just kills a spider,
Right.
and Nick Fury's like, hey, you ready to go to work, you little fucker?
That's
So-
what you message me before our
quite-
show every time.
It's a cool pairing. I like it. It's quite a cool pairing.
But, Murdoch leaves the bar. Nick Fury and Peter Parker take a room. And there's no lights in the room, as Nick Fury apparently requested. Matt Murdock does his basically impossible acrobatics to jump up the wall and get into the room. And he calls himself the Devil. So,
A little on the nose, but
yeah. Again, like I said, I kind of hate that they're all direct correlations given the setup, but I mean, I don't necessarily put that on the writer. Like, Joe Quesada's the editor and the editor in chief in the story, and it could very easily just be the fact that Joe Quesadilla needed to exert entirely too much creative control.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
So,
Now, at this point in the story novel, bro, what was your impression on how they presented this time frame as far as accuracy goes?
It
Like the
started with
dress,
the
the
candle.
architecture, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, the architecture's fine, but it started with the candles, and then I started seeing other things along the way. But mostly, it looks all right for the time frame. The architecture was starting to get a lot more advanced and a lot more picturesque. People were starting to have a lot more pride in how their towns and their cities looked. Things weren't so easy to burn down by that point. And yeah, when it comes to the taverns and stuff like that, when you look at the era-specific drinking cups and things, they're all like steel or iron drinking cups. So if they get clattered, they can easily just get hammered back into place again and used again. Doesn't matter how dented or whatever they are, like, they can just be reused. They weren't using anything like the Greeks using bloody clay cups and stuff like that. That would just simply break as soon as they hit the floor. Those things could take a bit of a beating.
Or wood or horn in the Dark Ages to high medieval time.
Well, I think they actually were a lot more creative in the medieval era, because that's when there was like goblets, like big fanciful goblets for kings and things like that. It was all
Well,
much more the riches that they could get a hold of. So it went from the clay up to, right up to like the really smart decorated cups, and then, when there was more and more commoners about, it was less likely that you'd be able to get them, so you just get the cool wee steel cups.
Yeah, but a tavern isn't going to have a bunch of pewter decorated goblets. They're just going to have like wood tankards.
Oh hell no! And you'd be lucky to find any glass cups either.
Yeah, glass was stupid expensive at that time.
It was a thing, though, from what I understand, right?
I don't think for drinkware though. Not for drinkware so much.
There was some that early. It's just very uncommon.
Like you would get glass bottles, but you wouldn't get like a wine glass, so to speak.
Oh no, nothing quite so thin and finely done after that. Glass blowing would really need to go leaps and bounds before we could ever reach that stage.
Now,
back then we were doing some crazy shit with windows. We were doing some real crazy shit with dyes and windows, but stuff that we can't replicate now, and that's what's going to be quite sad about Notre Dame.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And the cathedral and all that.
They said the same thing about the Damascus steel, and haven't we figured out how to do that?
Not properly.
Eventually, yeah.
So
modern Damascus steel isn't the same as like Damascus steel from like 600-700 years ago, though it doesn't have the same properties.
Yeah, it's basically recreation stuff, because the finer Damascus steel was basically all those mines were fucking hammered and chiseled right out.
Well, just to in the interest of moving the plot along, we cut over to Stephen Strange, and he goes, through a trip through with Looking Glass, like he spoke of earlier in the book, and he starts to see things. He sees a boat with a silvery blonde-haired child and a very large Native American-looking gentleman on it. He sees a.
I like this character. I like this character because there's a little bit of lore and history with this character. How do you pronounce it? Is it Rojas?
Rojas, yes.
Raja. Oh, I thought it was Raja. Or Raza or something like that.
Well, that kind of gives away the game. We're gonna go with Rojas because that's how I said it before I looked it up.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But
I like him because there was like ancient Indian like bloody stories and tales about tall, giant, blonde-haired people who were there before them, and they'd actually apparently been killed off. But apparently this one hasn't.
Yeah, that's where I thought they were going with that too.
Well,
initially.
there's a twist. There's a Shamalama Ding Dong twist with this character, but we're not going to talk about it right now. But you get the picture of the Indian and the silver blonde girl who is supposed to be Virginia Dare, or the Virginia Maid is the name of the ship, and that leads us to imply that this is Virginia Dare, the first child of America on the ship. And he shifts again, and you see a guy, sitting in like a waterfall or something like that. You get to see Angel again. Then you see a priest and a nun in a red habit. And then the nun in the red habit sees Strange's spectral form, which is supposed to be impossible for somebody that doesn't know magic. And this kind of harkens back as to why I hate using existing characters instead of just using the tropes to create new characters in these types of stories. Because as soon as I see a nun in a red robe that has magic powers, I know it's Scarlet Witch. And in direct correlation with that, I have to assume that the old man she's standing next to is none other than one Eric Lyncher, Magneto.
Interesting.
So that's kind of my whole argument against, like, that. Don't get me wrong, I adore the story. When it's all said and done, these are 8 comic books that if you enjoy the medium of reading comic books, you should sit down and read. I just have to tear them apart because it's the only thing that gives me happiness anymore.
Or if you like historical fiction, I would suggest reading them as well.
Well, I mean,
you're always going to find something along the.
Well, the thing is it just makes me think about it, and because I have to, look at this with such a critical eye and not just take everything at face value, it means that I have to suspend my disbelief a little bit more than I used to. And I'm starting to notice that there are certain patterns that people use in storytelling when using these characters, and it's easier for me to get away from that mindset and actually enjoy the comic book if I don't. It's kind of a selfish thing, right? Like, because if you've never read a Marvel comic book and this is the first one you pick up, it's going to be awesome.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
if you've only seen the MCU movies and you know nothing about the comic book medium as a whole, and you read 1602, it's probably going to be one of the most amazing, storytelling experiences of your life. However, if you know as much as I know about comic books, the element of surprise that Magneto is involved with the church somehow in this, in this story, I don't even get the payoff of that reveal because I see a red witch standing next to an old man, and I was like, oh, there's Scarlet Witch and Magneto. I wonder where Quicksilver is.
Right.
I don't want to be that guy, but isn't Magneto ethnically?
That's addressed later on in the book.
That's
That's addressed later on in the book. We don't have to name the Halsey.
I'll get there.
We're not going to name the Halsey.
No. I'll just leave it at that.
I'm cluing you in that as of the debate between Southern Dingo and Captain Tazaryak of the Black Israelites in New York, the JQ has become the HQ, not headquarters, but the Halsey question. See, Halsey doesn't get you demonetized. You get where I'm going,
Fair
Novel
enough.
Bro?
I think so.
Just we can talk about Halsey's people and the Halseyites, but let's just keep the other words to a minimum. You feel me?
Yes, naturally. Maybe we can extend to card carrying members of a certain brotherhood. We'll just leave it at that.
No. I mean, Halsey is one of those card carrying members. Halsey English.
I just thought we're just running through acceptable language that doesn't get us.
Oh no, Halsey is acceptable language for now. We'll just say Halsey. I actually, yeah. I mean, until the ADL catches on. He's talking about Jewish people. Magneto is Jewish.
I thought I would be the one. I genuinely thought I would be the.
But immediately after the dream sequence with Doctor Strange, you're thrust back into a scene that basically shows that Magneto is the Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition. That thing that nobody ever expects.
No, nobody does.
Nobody expected Magneto to be Grand. It fits. It fits in the Monty Python sense. It fits in every sense.
Right. I mean, nobody expects a Halsey to be in charge of the Spanish Inquisition. But
Very true.
he is being
Bring out the rack.
he is being attended to by his son and daughter, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Um, now, the interesting part about this is they don't know that they're his children in this storyline. And if I'm not mistaken, this was what, 2003? So this was one of the last
I
stories
think
that,
so.
well, not one of the last, but this is around the era where Marvel really kind of discontinued the use of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver as mutants. And they even had this really weird 2-issue miniseries where it was basically explained that they were, created with alien technology, I think by Ultron in the comics to be canonical with the MCU, and that it was a secret, and that Magneto raises them thinking that they were his children, but they never were, and Polaris is actually his only child. It's a very weird time. But
Yeah.
this is when Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were still mutants and they were still Magneto's child. So
That makes more canonical sense to me than that, the long-winded attempt to make it so that it's alien technology. It feels too forced, if you know what I mean. But with the Magneto's children thing, that makes sense, Maybe Magneto had a lot of pent-up, rage, and he just had to shack something.
So I gotta check the YouTube
Well, you're not
chat.
wrong.
Nobody said anything about the Halseys. Chad must not be watching anymore.
All right, that makes sense.
But I think we're good. But yeah, let's briefly pull up Magneto and his children so everybody can get kind of a look at them. You've got your nun in her red habit. You've got Quicksilver with his, stylish haircut, and Magneto looking a whole lot like Moses. This is not your everyman's Magneto. I've never seen Magneto with balding, so this is nice. It almost feels like they didn't realize they were drawing Magneto. Does that make
Makes
sense?
sense. Like, our slash accidental Magneto. It would make it look quite cool, actually. I think that's probably, what they probably were drawing him out and they saw him doing crazy hands. Wait a minute.
Well, the fact
Magneto.
that they bring his actual canonical helmet into this,
Yeah, I didn't like that.
yeah, like I feel like it should have been like a suit of armor or something that just like really like almost like onslaught armor, but made
Yeah,
for a
or
normal
if
sized
they made
man.
that helmet more, or if they made the helmet more like period accurate, even though suit armor was kind of going out of fashion at this point.
Yeah, but that
because of
was
firearms. But
well. The thing is Magneto's armor would be plate so that it didn't get caught up in his magnetic powers, or not plate, but it would be like what am I thinking of? Like it would be like leather armor. It would be more lightweight, and it would have the cloak and everything. It would be a lot like Nick Fury's outfit. Like literally, it almost feels like they were like, "All right, we're drawing Magneto. No, that's supposed to be Nick Fury. Replace the head." All right, we're drawing this. We're drawing Moses. No, that's supposed to be Magneto. Just add a helmet later.
yeah, the helmet should have been stylized differently, in my opinion.
But
yeah, because if you look at the guard outside the Queen's quarters, like the pipe.
we're talking about a helmet that's not in play yet. Everybody, anybody watching this now or later, this helmet not in play yet. You're not missing anything. We just know what's going to happen. So
it's on the way.
After you see, Magneto and his offspring, We skip back over to Virginia Dare and her Native American cohort, Rohaj, and he speaks very simply. And I actually really like this about him. They don't, they don't try and sell
Same,
us the
same.
perfectly speaking English, like the perfectly English speaking Native American. Like he has some words, but you can tell that English isn't supposed to be his first language. Um,
Like, make this work for me, but not for you.
Now, this enters the portion of the story where you get a little more backstory and then some action. Um, First off, Nick Fury and Peter Parker are basically just going through the motions and talking about how, you know, there's a plot and the Templars and the Spanish Inquisition and all of this stuff is very important and witch breeds are shunned, but everybody has their purpose. And he's basically preparing Peter Parker to be his assistant, which is an exposition device. Let's be completely honest. Now, this is
Right.
another one of the reasons that I wanted you on this episode, Novel Bro. The Templars' outfits and, like Ayrton was talking about, wardrobe, like historically canonical or not?
Um, I couldn't see on the their surcoats and stuff, but see what they're wearing on their heads? No, 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 no. They would not be wearing those fucking pills on their heads. They would not be seen dead with them on. I guarantee you. The guy at the front with the helm and stuff like that, with the chainmail and stuff like that, with the coif and things. Yeah, that's all accurate. But the things on their heads, like this ain't it, fam.
Really?
I like the inclusion of the kite shields.
Yeah, I like the inclusion of the kite shields as well because they are actually
Even in
quite
desert travel, they
they're
wouldn't wear that kind of garb?
no, no, no. Their cloaks had hoods, had proper hoods.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting.
And that was partly the reason why it was all right for them. And they couldn't go out for very long, but most of their movements were either as soon as the sun had passed the yardarm and stuff. When it wasn't so fucking ridiculously hot for them to move around. And plus, with them wearing white when they're out in the desert and stuff like that, that helped make it a bit easier. But for those hospitalers dressed in black, oh, those boys must have been sweating, even in the cities.
Now,
Because, as people know, if you're wearing black, you're more likely to attract the sun's heat.
there's a bit of an action scene where Nick Fury and Peter Parker stop in an alleyway to allow someone who's been pursuing them to attack them, and the character fails miserably and gets the living shit kicked out of them by Nick Fury. And basically, Nick Fury's just like, I'm gonna toss him over my shoulder and take him to the tower where I can interrogate him later.
That's right.
Now,
He's using his Michael Jordan strength, man.
now one thing I want to point out: one, that it's not actually called chainmail; it's just called mail. And two, I don't think it would bend a knife into a curve like that. It would probably just chip it the fuck up.
Hardened leather actually would bend a
Yeah.
knife like that when coupled with mail.
Only if it's under the mail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he does say leather and chainmail, nothing magic about it. So I'm assuming you would layer that properly.
Yeah, however, I think a man like fucking Nick Fury would probably prefer Lanoir because it offers a lot more maneuverability and cuts down the weight and offers the exact same amount of protection for
And
budget fucking
It was
price.
available in
And
1600s
honestly,
England.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
absolutely, it was available in the 1100s Byzantine Empire.
Is Uncle Ben alive? Yes,
Well,
he is.
and if you're gonna layer it, you wouldn't really wear leather under the mail. You would typically have like a shirt, then the mail, and then probably leather on top of it.
Yeah,
No.
so you're probably talking gambeson, mail,
Well,
then
that
probably the leather over it.
you would wear mail under metal armor. You would wear mail over leather armor, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
No,
If
no,
you're wearing
no.
civilian
You
clothing on
typically
top
wear
of it, right?
no. Well, it's the way because mail is tailored to fit like tightly, like snug. So
Is it?
you would wear it typically underneath. You might wear a gambeson
Yeah,
over
yeah.
top of the mail, but typically and you might wear mail over top of gambeson, but not typically leather armor, which wasn't really common anyways, because leather's expensive to work with, and a cow is a beast of burden, and you would have to kill it at like its adolescent phase to get the toughest leather, and that makes no sense to do when you could use it for another several years, and then the leather is less
Even
quality when it's
the-
older. But
Yeah. The Sassanids were hot onto this as well. That's why they used
you're for-
tough horse leather.
You're forgetting something very important there. What was abundant in the Americas and actually being sent back to England quite regularly?
Was that the buffalo?
That would be some buffalo.
or
Or an aurochs?
Uh,
Or the
you,
old
you
days,
had
but
you,
even then,
you had
it
tougher
would be
you
old
you had
age
tougher
leather.
leather than cows, is what I'm getting at in this era.
that
Oh, naturally,
That's
especially when I
fair.
made a reference to the horse leather, and a lot of the West cottoned on to methods of warfare through the East.
and
And
a lot of like a rawhide too.
so
Exactly.
anyway, first off, it's a comic book character getting stabbed and not dying because of the plot. I'm gonna give it to him that he was doing it right and wearing the leather underneath the chainmail, or maybe his cloak was chainmail or had a chainmail lining, and that is what stopped the leather.
Especially ring mail. If you get the ring mail in close around the jacket, stuff like that, yeah, you could split it into segments and make it do the same thing.
But anyway,
Or segmented plate armor, like a what's it called, a brigadine?
Or a cuirass.
Yeah.
now what none of us are talking about though is the startling similarities to the attacker to the vulture.
Aye. He looks a weird, creepy ass dude anyway.
Well, the color scheme, the bald head, he looks like a rabid vulture. Like he looks like the vulture and one of those like bald vampires from Blade 2.
Yeah, I can see that.
And later on in the series, we're going to see another assassin sent by the same guy that looks almost just very similar. Almost like the vulture character was crossbred with the mole men to make minions. I don't particularly have a problem with that. Like, it's never explained, and it doesn't mean enough for me to care. It's some kind of a nice way to see, hey, all right, I see what you did there. I'm okay with it.
All I'm saying is it's a parody porno that I wouldn't care to direct.
Now,
No, but you would ingest it.
you get a short little scene with Matt Murdock and Captain Nelson, who is, helping him transport by ship to meet the Templars on Fury's request. Not like they're law partners like they are in the real world, but you get a little nod to, oh, well, there's Foggy Nelson's doppelganger. Again, Foggy Nelson has no superpowers. There's no reason that you should have a goddamn Foggy Nelson in this era.
That you're right about that. It doesn't make sense. From what I'm aware of the Daredevil canon, yeah, it doesn't make sense for Foggy Nelson to be in the 1600s.
Like, not even not even his ancestors. Fuck that. Like, no.
Yeah, it needs to be Irish as fuck. With a name like Foggy and Nelson.
Well, Matt Murdock is very, very Irish and very proud of it.
That's true. That is true.
Even in this story, he's very, very Irish. He's just Irish for hire.
Very, very ginger.
So,
Well, I mean, any Irishman, if you give him enough money to buy a few pints, you can get him to do anything.
well, after
They could probably run up walls.
after that cute little nod, you see them getting ready to burn the angel mutant. You see a character that looks strikingly like Cyclops, and a character that has powers very similar to Iceman because they're Cyclops and Iceman, executing a rescue of Angel. And it's a nice little hey, the X-Men are here, and then there's like three pages of exposition.
Well, well, this is another thing I wish they would have done a little bit differently. As much as I like Angel, and I get they were doing it like the original X-Men.
Yeah,
it really should have been Nightcrawler, right?
No, because Nightcrawler could have just gotten out of the cell. He never would have been captured.
Well, he has to be able to see where he's going.
There were bars in that
to be
cell.
Able to teleport. Well, if they had him in a cell that didn't have bars in it, I'm just saying the
you don't.
Iconography, the imagery of it, Nightcrawler would have worked better.
Oh yeah,
this sort of story,
right? Anyway,
that's what I'm saying. Like they could have had him blindfolded while he was tied to the stake.
Yeah,
there's ways you could have made it make sense.
Well, technically, he can go anywhere.
Absolutely.
He can even see in his head. So, calm down.
But if he's young enough and doesn't know how to do that yet.
Oh yeah, and let's not pussyfoot around it. These are all teenagers. Like these are not full grown children, like full grown people.
Yeah.
These are all like kids. This is literally
Right.
X-Men First Class.
Yeah.
X-Men young.
Which that's why I say I get why they used Angel, but Nightcrawler, I think, image-wise, would have been cooler.
Absolutely, especially with his his attachment to God and all that. He could have been a more God, why have you forsaken me? And all that.
Yeah.
But then you get like a little bit of exposition about the Templar journey, leaving Jerusalem with the most powerful item in existence, and it's a nice little nod to the Templar journey and how. Also, one thing we failed to mention: all of this started because the weather's fucking weird. I mean, that's the whole premise of this entire story having a starting point is the Queen's like, hey, call that magic guy that's supposed to be my doctor. Hey, you guys, why is the weather so fucked up right now? We don't know.
Right.
I don't know either. Oh, we'll figure it the fuck out because the weather's fucking weird. And you find out that the weather's been weird in America too.
Quite canonically interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same for stories. Apparently, a storm really fucked up King James's journey home, and from there on, he vowed to hunt all the witches.
Yeah.
It makes canonical sense.
But the thing is you don't get that backstory. Like they don't give you that backstory in this comic. Like that's why he's so pissed off at the witch breed and all that stuff. Like they don't talk about the fact that the weather's just been really fucked up. But they do talk about how tiny lizards were raining and blood was raining and it somehow this treasure of the Templars is supposed to be the be all end all, and that's why it's so important for Matt Murdock to get his hands on and bring back the Nick Fury, all that bullshit. This is where you meet Jean Grey, who they're, for whatever reason, and also I will say Neil Gaiman's a very weird person, and sometimes he does this, but they're playing that they're playing off that Jean Grey is a boy, even though she's clearly drawn as a girl. And
Neil Gaiman seems like he's into that twink action, a bit of the Hadrian Antino side.
I swear to God, Navarro, if you say that one phrase.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do such a...
Now, so we can skip over that. What would be the historical significance of them calling Jean a boy in this part?
I honestly can't
Well,
find
I
any
suppose
historical relevance
it's
for them
enough
to
to
call
believe
her.
it.
Well, hold on. Before you give your actual answer, from my layman's interpretation of everything, they're literally calling her a boy so that they can have you know, the reveal that, spoiler alert again, Angel is gay and has the hots for Jean because he thinks she's a very pretty boy. That's the only reason that I can understand that they'll have that facade up. Like, this is literally a situation where they're going to let Angel fly around in the sky. They obviously give no fucks about discretion. This is not a situation where they're like, oh, we have to worry about, subtleties and whatnot. No, they're literal bandits at this point. They're pirates. They're outlaws. The fact that they would care, like maybe rape was a much bigger problem in this time frame. I mean, am I off base there? Is that a thing?
Well, there was certainly fewer means to prosecute and catch them, so...
Well, what I'm getting at is if you have a band, like I can see having a band of, 4 young boys and 1 young girl and trying to convince the 4 young boys that the young girl is also a boy. I mean, that was basically the whole premise of Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah. The survival premise, better that they think you're a boy lest they start getting, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that works, but it just feels like, because the payoff of that whole thing, it doesn't make sense unless it's just basically to be like, oh yeah, no, Angel loved that person when he thought they were a man.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, but that was the only part of the story that I was just like, eh.
Yeah, I thought it was going to come into play later.
Although bonus points for the fact that it wasn't Iceman.
Of women at sea.
No,
right?
Hear me out.
Or something like that.
Bonus points. Well, they're never technically at sea for more than like 5 minutes.
That's a good point.
And they're only moving at sea because of the supposed boy. Anyway, we're on to issue 2 now. So this is the final shot of issue 1. You have the newly formed X-Men basically on the boat, tying up Angel's wings, letting everyone know, oh, we'll be fine. We're gonna go, to Javier's school. Javier, not to be confused with Xavier.
I'm
Is that how you're supposed to pronounce it?
Javier?
Javier, yeah. But I'm looking at that boat and I'm thinking, like, that should be a lot bigger by that point.
Chad Middleton. I don't actually think you see Tony Stark. Do you see Tony Stark in the main plot line?
No,
I have no idea. I've only read the first 2 issues. So.
Oh well, I mean, I guess that
no,
makes.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think he shows up in maybe for a second in the Fantastic Four, like 4-part, or possibly Spider-Man 1602. I can't remember though.
Yeah, I'm hitting Bob because
Yeah, because he's a loyalist to Scotland.
I don't know. Hold on, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
I like him already. Like a King James loyalist and yeah, that's what I call a good Presbyterian.
Of course, you like him already. All right. So, issue 2. Again, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of these covers are homages to works of the era. Like, I want to say I've seen something very similar to this maze as an actual work of art.
Well, labyrinths were pretty common, like iconography back then, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember where they originated though. I want to say Russia, but I don't know. I think it started somewhere, and I think all the big imperial courts of the era started catching on to it and stuff. And it's definitely era specific, very, very era specific, and anti-anachronistic. That, and even with the way they've done the the likelihoods of the people. Like, I know the old medieval paintings were sometimes not very accurately depicting humans, but by that point, artistry was like getting very fine and very detailed by that point. So yeah, I appreciate that covering to 1602.
Issue 2.
Chad, Tony Stark shows up initially in Marvel 1602 New World issue 2.
Right, which was the direct sequel to this.
Yeah.
We can cover that
This
if
shit
you
got a sequel? Ooh.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot of this, actually. And I like most of it except Witchbreed Hunter Angela. I don't like Angela's. They get the one part of Secret Wars.
I've read that.
It's one of those comic books where the art style changes like very, very like spontaneously in the middle of the issue. And you're supposed to like separate story beats by art. It's gross. I don't like it.
Okay, let's not do that one then.
Well, let's read it because you don't seem to like it. I don't seem to like it. It seems like mutual destruction.
Fine.
It's the final part of 1602, and it really has nothing to do with 1602 as a whole. So it's pretty inconsequential to the storyline. It just gives you a touch of Angela in 2015. Anyway, issue 2 opens up with a big half a letter page of exposition from Nick Fury writing to the Queen. Basically just being like, hey, you bitch, I'm doing some shit. This is what everybody else is doing. There's going to be some people showing up to come see you, and my boy servant will make sure that works. But I'm going to be fucking off doing some other things, and I can't tell you any more about it. So, trust me, bye. And then you see him basically
doing a John D.
Yeah, you see him basically riding up to the 1602 version of Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. It's Master Carlos Javier's Select College.
Carlos.
I read that Carlos.
Carol. Yeah, well, Carolus or Carolus. Yeah, it depends on where in the world.
Fuck it, Carl Javier's
Swedish way to say.
You know what? 1602 Xavier. How about that? Fuck both of y'all. 1602 Xavier's College for Sons of Gentle Folk. And the motto of the school is Omnia Mutator Nus et Mutimer in Illis. All things change, and we change with them.
You studied Latin in school, didn't you?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like dead languages.
Okay.
I never studied anything of the sort because my high school system is a fucking sham.
Oh no! I had to
I
audit
was
it.
being sarcastic, novel bro.
I had to audit a college class for like 15 days, and then I was allowed to basically borrow one of their textbooks and lesson plans in a detention hall for the rest of the semester. And I got a college credit for
Makes
it in my
sense.
senior year. It's a very weird setup, but it worked. But anyway, you're met by a pretty, accurate representation of Beast. But I figured this is one of the scenes that probably pissed you off the most, Ayrton. When he lights up his pipe while waiting on Professor Xavier, and Xavier makes him throw his tobacco out. And instead of just emptying the pipe into his glove, which is what most normal human beings do, he throws the whole pipe in the fireplace.
Yeah, that's
That
so-
grinds my gears big time. See, when I saw that,
so-
I actually had to put down my tablet for a minute and be like, he fucking dead. What?
Yeah, and who the
So
fuck
a
didn't
pipe,
smoke indoors in
smoke
1602? Like, doctors smoked
Well,
in their
when you
doctor's
smoke-
offices in fucking 1920. Like, 300 years ago, you're
Well-
telling me people didn't allow you to smoke indoors?
well,
Who the fuck is going to
No.
tell Nick Fury he
No,
can't
see-
smoke in their house?
see, you're missing part of it though. So when you smoke a pipe, it takes like 6 to 8 months of breaking in that pipe before it smokes perfectly and tastes correctly. So if he's had that pipe for a decent amount of time, he put a lot of work into that thing, and that is a precious object or that he owns.
Is
You
that
wouldn't
why
just
people that
throw
smoke
that
pipes? Is that why people that smoke pipes never get rid of them?
Yeah, I mean, I have like 9 pipes. It's because there's a break-in period, there's the perfect like good smoking period, then there's the period where if you smoke it too much, you might damage it, but it tastes amazing, so you only smoke it occasionally. So your average pipe smoker will have at least 3 on hand at all times. One they're working on, one that they smoke every day, and one for special occasions. So yeah, you would never throw a pipe out like that.
It's not even something to do as a flex. Not even back then.
Yeah, no, you would never throw a pipe out like that.
Well, you would never
There's-
tell the
in
queen.
my family.
You would never tell the queen's informant and like number 1 to stop smoking, no matter where he was.
Well,
You would realize who he
Well-
was, and you would be like, "Thank you for smoking in my home, sir."
but let me put it into perspective. There's still pipes from my great grandfather in my family.
Oh no, I get it. We'll talk off air about that, but
that's
I've got a couple of pipe stories that don't involve crack cocaine. A couple.
I just come from a cigarette family.
Oh, I do too. That's
a
my
great one where
main delivery method. Don't get me wrong.
where my great grandma decided to be nice and clean my great grandfather's pipe.
No.
She did it with soap and water.
No.
Yeah, soap and water. He didn't talk to her for like a week after she did that.
Oh, damn, I'd have written her out of the will.
He might have.
Good lord.
It's also He's also the reason my dad doesn't drink beer, because my dad was like 4 and asked him if he could try his beer, because he would always have a beer in a pipe after dinner.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Sure, kid, here you go."
You asked for this.
My dad took a big swig of it. Yeah, my dad took like a big swig of it like it was a soda. And,
This-
and it scarred him for the rest of his life.
So, anyway, beyond that, you get to meet the X-Men and in their origin uniforms, I guess. And they're a little too modern for my taste, Novel Bro. I'm assuming that just like got your jimmies in a ruffle as well.
So you'd be correct in assuming so, and I suppose there's quite a lot of modern anachronisms to Fury's outfit as well, to be fair.
Really? Well, I mean, that's kind of like
Yeah.
we asked about that in the beginning, and you were like, "No, it's all right."
We're talking about the armor parts. Yes, the armor parts are all right, but when we're looking at the overall aesthetic of the outfit, that looks like it's better suited in the early 1700s.
Okay. And how so?
Right, picture Fury on the stern of a ship, but instead of his jacket being purple, imagine it being blue. You know how you get those weird triangle hats?
Yeah,
Put
tricone.
that on his head. Yeah, put that on top of his head.
Yeah.
Voila. There you have an era-specific Nick Fury.
In 1700.
Absolutely. All you need to do is add a couple of pistols and
Now, what
put
would
his
you
new
what
flashy
would you
saber.
what would you say that basically the Queen's number one would look like in this era?
He'd have that weird frilly stuff around his neck.
Like the portraits of Shakespeare and shit, where they have that
piece.
Yes, exactly like that. And his hair would be like above his head and everything.
You know that there's actually a storyline involving Shakespeare in this series.
Well, I'll be damned. Is that a knife I see before me?
No, I'm just twisting your arm, making you interested in the rest of this. But
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
but no, you get a lot of backstory for the Xavier School in this particular sequence, and you find out that
Here's a picture. Here's a picture of your typical like male dress from that era. If it loads, there it goes. At the live show chats.
Thank you. Yeah, spot on with the frilly hair curls and the long flowing. Yeah, with the hat
big,
and everything.
Yeah, big hats, lots of poofy shit.
Yeah, like nailed it. Oh,
church is tight. He would definitely have like a small sword or like a basket hilt broadsword on him.
Yeah, but yeah, make that purple. Add make the guy black, and that would be your Nick Fury.
Yeah, put an eye patch on him. Well, Nick Fury wasn't originally black now, bro.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so fair enough. That would be quite an accurate Nick Fury if the early canonical Nick Fury still stuck with the purples.
Yeah. Which purple would make sense. Kind of that royal, high status color.
Yeah, man, that would be like an old hearkening to imperial days. Like, yes, I like the look of that purple. I'm feeling quite Roman today.
Right. A little bit trickier to produce. He would have money working for the Queen.
Exactly. Exactly, and the method to create purples would have been a lot easier to reproduce by that point as well. So I wouldn't have just been relying on shellfish blood and stuff, or the ink from the what do you call them, squids.
Right. Because they would have used, to make purples, they would have used would have been like berries mixed with something, right?
I'll pull up real quick the picture of the X-Men costumes, and then there's a brief interaction between Peter Parker and Rohaj and Virginia Dare. Basically, you get to see the scale of just how big Rohaj is. Like, most doors are just barely tall enough for him to get through. I mean, this is a big son of a
and
bitch.
that's actually interesting. Because people are actually, on average, shorter at that time frame, right, Novel Bro?
Oh, no, they were starting to get a bit taller by the 1600s. Like, don't get me wrong, there were still dudes that were averaging on like 6 feet, 6'2" back in the high Middle Ages as well. Because there was some German dudes that were walking around a bit fucking taller than everybody else. These were the dudes from the Holy Roman Empire and stuff, the Habsburg Empire and stuff, and their guards were some big boys. Like, but if we're talking Rojas, the difference between I see some kind like that would be anti-anachronistic if Rojas is meant to be a harkening back to the predecessors to the Indians 10,000 years ago that the Navajo talk about. They were supposed to be on average 8 to 10 feet tall.
Right. Which, so unfortunately, that's not
would look small next to that, man.
Unfortunately, that's not the the reference to him, which sucks. But
now,
I thought the average person was like 5'6", 5'7", up until like the
motherfucker. The average person's still only 5'7". What are you talking about?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people.
There's 2 billion Chinese in the world. Do you really think we've gotten that much taller as a fucking population?
the average European.
Oh,
I
European.
feel quite blessed right now. I really do. I feel really blessed right now as a 6'1" man.
Oh well, I've only got 2.5 stories on you. It's cool.
I tell you.
But huh? Me? 3 stories. My shoe size is foundation.
Foundation for estate.
Yeah.
He has to custom order his Nikes.
That's right. Well, no, I get Shaq's hand-me-downs. No, that didn't go over. Nobody laughed at that.
You cut out.
I said I get Shaq's hand-me-downs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
He has shoes that are a little bigger than what I need. And by the time he wears them in, they're super comfy.
Put them on his feet, and he could just take about 3 steps, and that's them broken in, man. The size of that fucking dude.
Well, I mean, he's like 4 stories tall. Like, he's the only person in the world taller than me. And I'm a building. But anyway, after the brief sequence with Peter and Rohaj and Virginia, you skip over to a nice little, just a nice little aside where you get introduced to Black Widow, who Matt Murdock introduces as the most dangerous woman in Europe. And she kind of alludes to her own identity by sewing a spider web or crocheting a spider web. I don't even think that's actually possible from what I know about crocheting. Huh?
Why couldn't you?
What, a spider web? It's entirely too loose, and it wouldn't actually hang off your needles like the one in the picture is doing.
I don't know. I'll ask my sister to try and do it.
Yeah, good luck with that. Like, loose crochet is literally just a ball of yarn when you put it down.
Well, she's knitting, not crocheting. Crocheting uses that like one needle hook.
Ayrton, they made the hooks in like
What?
the 80s. She's not
Yeah,
knitting.
so that's knitting, not crochet.
No. What she's doing is crocheting. Knitting is by definition tight.
No, that
Crocheting is a loose knit format.
I thought, I'm pretty sure that crochet is one needle, knitting is with two.
I'm pretty sure.
Google it.
My mother crochets, and she can do a blanket with big holes in it, but you can't knit something like that because you're not using yarn to knit. At least not thick yarn.
I haven't got a fucking clue. I have absolutely no idea.
Anyway, I've seen crocheted spider webs.
According to Google, knitting uses a pair of long needles to form the loops, moving a set of loops from one needle to the other. The stitches are held onto the needle. Crochet uses a single hook to hook the loops together directly on the one piece.
Oh.
Bam.
Okay. Well, sure. I still don't think you can accomplish a spider web by knitting.
I don't know.
Figure that out, bitch.
Dealing with mutants here.
Oh, I'll fucking Google it.
I'll just call whatever you find left-wing propaganda.
That's right.
To the viewers, I humbly apologize for my friends.
What are you apologizing for us for? Did somebody name a Halsey while I wasn't listening? I thought you'd like that. Anyway,
it's an easier way to talk about them.
Oh, yeah, it is. But one thing we didn't cover in the last issue is that...
Bam, suck it.
I'll not be doing that.
Well, I guess that answers that.
I'll not be doing that, no matter how wrong I was. I still don't believe that's knitted. I believe it's crocheted. Fuck you. Moving on. See how easy that was, Novel Bro? That's the only way. Like that's all you have to do to win an argument. I still don't believe you. You're wrong. It's almost like I've heard a Destiny debate. Almost like I've heard a Destiny debate in the last 2 days. But
oh man.
But anyway, in the first issue, Dr. Doom was mentioned, and they call him Doom the Handsome, which, for anybody that knows anything about Marvel Comics, obviously Doom is not the handsome. His face was horribly disfigured on a mission with the Fantastic Four. However, in this continuity, Doom is very much a handsome individual. And you don't find out about it.
He has a very Chad name.
Oh yeah, Otto Von Doom.
Otto Von Doom. I love it. I fucking love it.
And he's not just a Lord Victor Von Doom. He is Count Otto Von Doom.
That's right. He'll be part of the big confederacy known as the HRE.
Now, we get to we get to Novel Bro's probably favorite character around here, where they introduced King James of Scotland.
Oh, so this is when we can take a bathroom break while he goes off and has his boy crush about James the Sixth.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I want to hear him do that.
maybe in the next episode I can prep a real fucking love you letter to the guy. Just
He'll come back up, so I mean, just do what you have to now, and we'll correct the record later.
plenty of time for that. Well, I'm looking at the time now and thinking like, Jesus, we'll need to wrap up soon anyway.
I mean, we've still got 25 minutes, so unless you have to go.
No, not at all. I'm sitting here in lockdown just like everybody else.
But anyway, why don't you talk about King James the Sixth of Scotland, the First of England?
Ah, yes. Well, actually, apparently,
Hold on, you have
King
to
James
on a
II-
comic book channel. You have to do it correctly. Actually, continue.
Actually, it's King James II of England and King James VI of Scotland. Apparently, there was a James before him, and
I think this comic book actually gets that
that.
wrong at a later point, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Actually, but yes, this King James that I love so much was quite the legend, as he is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and we all know how that story ended, but King James was definitely the payback tale for that one, because not only did he become King of Scotland, but he became King of... What was that?
That's how Mary, Queen of Scots ended.
So, yeah, definitely I didn't end too well for her. It was like a big chop, like a big... But after she died, her son then became King of Scotland.
Can you get me too'd by a dead woman?
In Wales.
Yes.
Probably. I haven't looked that far into it, to be fair, but all I know is he became King of Scotland, then King of England, then Wales, and then he set up the plantation of Ulster, so he could become King of 4 nations instead of just 3. And,
now, during this time, did he ever fuck with Ireland?
During this time, there were still parts of Ireland that were still English, like Dublin.
But Ireland proper, did he ever fuck with that?
Never needed to. For Forma, Armagh, and Connacht were their own thing at that point anyway, so they were too busy arguing with each other to bother about Ulster.
There's an in-story reason that he doesn't fuck with Ireland in this book, is what I'm getting
at. Yeah, because he has, not that he didn't have a soft spot for the Irish.
Oh no, you'll get to it as you read further into these books. Like I'm talking about in these books, there's an in-story reason why he doesn't fuck with Ireland, and it's fantastic. You'll love it.
Fair enough. I like where that is going, because it keeps him on task and focused on getting the throne of England. So yeah, I like how it's doing that, and I like how it'll like keep him focused on maintaining that throne when he gets it. So yeah, I like that. It keeps him focused. It keeps him in the land of historical accuracy as well. So fair play. If you need a couple of mutant boys to do that, then fuck I'm 100% behind that.
Well, just kind of going forward, we find out that Quicksilver, aka Pietro, is basically used. He's basically used as a messenger in between the King of Scotland and the leader of the Spanish Inquisition.
Makes sense. If you want a courier, you naturally want the fastest in the fucking world.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's kind of a joke that every time they wonder how he got news to them so quickly, he was like, "I just run fast," and it makes it makes James crack up every fucking time he hears it, and that's
that is quite a Scottish joke. That is quite a Scottish joke. Like, I hear, how do you fucking get here? I just fucking ran past you, Dad.
But it does really fuck with me a little bit that that's what Quicksilver is reduced to in the story. Like, you send a motherfucker who can shoot the heat of 1,000 suns out of his eyeballs, and the son of a bitch that can make ice walls to free a guy with wings, when they're literally somebody that can break the fucking sound barrier and do it without ever being seen. Maybe you just use that guy.
Even if he is seen,
who the fuck can catch him?
Complete his task and get him out there.
Yeah, like
exactly. That's what I was getting to. That's exactly what I was getting to. Even if he is seen from a distance, what's stopping him from completing his task and then just vanishing in a blink of an eye anyway?
Right. I mean, he's the next best thing to Nightcrawler in this scenario. But
absolutely,
you get a little bit more like forced backstory between Peter and Virginia Dare, and I don't think that it's a mistake that Virginia Dare kind of looks like Gwen Stacy in this story. Now that I think about it, like, I hadn't thought about it until this point, but it really feels like
that is a good point.
Yeah, it really feels like, because Virginia Dare was a fucking brunette. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. Like, blondes didn't really come into the mix until we diversified a hell of a lot more than the original colonies. There wasn't a whole lot of blonde-headed people in the United States when the Spaniards fucking discovered it, right?
Yeah, not till the Swedes started intermingling.
So
exactly.
That silver blonde hair, I mean, that's a Gwen Stacy reference if I've ever seen one. But you get a little more exposition with them. You get a mention of Uncle Ben. Shout out Chad Middleton. You asked about that earlier. You get kind of an explanation of what Peter's doing if you didn't read the first issue, and then you switch back over to Stephen Strange, and he's like, I need 2 candles and a net and some chalk, maybe. His wife's like, why do you need those things? She's like, why do you need those things? He's like, I have no idea. I'm going to the palace now. Bye. And that's pretty much all the story you get.
I just realised something. If Uncle Ben is in this timeline, then that must mean he would have fought in the Hussite Wars. He would have been jumping about with the Lands Connect.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I get the idea that certain, like, archetypes of characters pop up. But, like I said, you don't need an Aunt May or an Uncle Ben to get a Spider-Man. You don't need a Charles Xavier or a Magneto to get mutants. You don't, like, you get what I'm saying?
No.
Like, what's stopping somebody from getting bitten by a spider and calling themselves the Arachnid instead of having a Spider-Man, right? Like, why do we need a Peter Parker?
Like a previous embodiment of what Spider-Man would become, you know? Like say, it's happened before, but you are the new guy, Mr. Parker.
Well, no, the whole premise of this entire story is that it's supposed to happen 300 and something years in the future, and unfortunately is happening now. Like, once you get a little further into the series with issue 3, 4, and 5, like, a lot of things, like, open up to you. Even if your base rudimentary knowledge is the MCU and what you've seen on this show. Like, everything just kind of clicks into place after issue 5, and the rest of it's just cleanup. So,
fair enough. I probably will find myself appreciating the cleanup a lot more, so I'll brush up on a lot more of that before we get moving on through the story again.
Now, how much do you know about American history?
Limited, but I've got an overall view of your timeline, basically.
So, is the importance of Roanoke Colony really there. Like, I know Virginia Dare is like a historical name or whatever, but is the colony of Roanoke as important as pop culture wants us to think it is?
Believe it or not, there's a lot more nowadays. But elementary schooling and what we're taught over here, there's minimal. Everything what I would learn about it would end up being, like deeper looks into it through documentaries or whatnot.
Well, Roanoke was basically they just disappeared. Like
Well,
we
yeah,
have no
there's
record of what really happened to that colony.
well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know shit about it because, like I said, I mean, there's Roanoke, Virginia, and there's the colony of Roanoke historically, but
Right.
this and American Horror
So
Story, like this comic book series and American Horror Story, really want me to believe that it's important. Kind of like, and again, if we get kicked off YouTube or canceled because of this, follow us on D Live. But kind of like Black Lives Matter and Watchmen, really want me to think that the Tulsa bombing was this huge historical event that I never learned about in school until there was a TV show based around a fucking comic book series that literally had nothing to do with the comic book series.
well,
Yeah,
I see why
especially when
they're
we're
using
talking the
Roanoke.
Tulsa bombing. That's quite well known over here, especially in a country that's been subject to bombings, in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that,
Yeah.
bombings and, the interest in who does them and things like that. That
Well,
has broadened
that-
out.
That's hold on. That's actually a completely different episode that we can get into because I can give you the Gen Y equivalent of what our historical references are to things of that nature. But in the grand scheme of things, we never learned about it in school. Like it, even in Black History Month, it's been kind of wiped from the record books. And I mean, that may be because I grew up in the South, but I figured down here, considering we have the most diversity per capita of any region of the United States, it'd kind of be a big deal, right?
True.
You'd think.
True. Well, you think so anyway.
But
Well,
anyway,
I think
that
the
can be its
idea
own episode.
of the
that
colony
we,
of Roanoke.
but hold on, we'll put a pin in that as far as Tulsa goes. Ayrton, you were saying
Okay.
about Roanoke.
Yeah, make another note, Ayrton.
Nope, Novel Bro, only
Well,
I can
so
do that. You
Roanoke,
tell me
I
to
think
make a note, I'll tell him to make a note. You don't get to go. You don't get to go over me and tell him things. There's a pecking order here.
Okay, Lord Pontiff, we must have him put another note in on the Tulsa matter. Can we get that?
I'll make a mental note of it, Novel Bro. Ayrton, can you make a physical note of that?
All right. You know I'm going to, right?
That's worse than firing him. I think is indentured servitude of my guitar playing co-host.
You literally turned him into Jamie Vernon from the JRE show. Yeah, pull that up, Ayrton. Yeah, pull that shit up, Ayrton.
No, he won't be able to pull shit up anymore. He's Spotify exclusive. You're talking about bringing in video just for him.
Fuck, guys. I'm not even mad. That dude's straight balling out of that deal. How much is he making? 100 mil out of that? Fucking hell, I'd fucking fuck off from YouTube for that.
He made fuck you money is what he made, Novel Bro. That's what we call that in the South. Fuck you money.
Exactly. We've seen Joe Rogan discuss this previously on shows and with other comedians and such like that. The fuck you money concept is a big big topic in the comedy scene, and Joe Rogan loves that concept.
Dillard Draws is calling you out in the chat, Ayrton. He says you play guitar. Guitar
What?
is basically a harp. That's pretty gay.
Fuck you, Dylan.
Hail, Dillard. Good to see you, buddy.
Bacchus.
No,
good to see
piano
you
is
as
a
well.
harp that you press buttons and it makes sounds.
Anyway,
It's basically a lute with less string.
no, Dillard.
Dirty,
It's
dirty Chad.
You're the one that plays the skin flute. You told me that in DMs.
No, I play harmonica.
No, I'm talking to Dillard. Dillard's the one that plays the skin flute.
I know. I see it.
Dillard in the chat.
As a Presbyterian, I like the fact that he plays flute.
Anyway, Rohaj, Peter, and Virginia Dare address the Queen, and during this, there is an assassination attempt on Virginia Dare by a very Vulture-esque assassin. And Rohaj, thinking on his feet, grabs a tray with a wine goblet on it and just flings it straight into the air, right at this Vulture-esque figure. The assassin falls to the ground, 3 claw marks on his face, very, very Wolverine-esque, right? And actually, Ayrton, I don't even think you know where Wolverine comes into all this, do you? Like, you haven't read beyond the first series. Wolverine makes an appearance. It's a real thing.
Oh, he does?
Not in these 8 books, but later on,
Well,
yes.
yeah.
Wolverine is very much part of 1602. He's actually in these 8 books, but you have no fucking clue who he is.
Well, that makes
Please
sense.
tell me his claw things are still made of bone.
Yes.
I like that. I really fucking like that.
Yeah. Bone Claw Wolverine's probably my favorite.
But anyway, after discovering the assassin has claw marks on his face, everyone looks around and just like, what the fuck happened? Where's Virginia? And you cut to a sequence of a giant griffin, I assume, on a rooftop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of issue 2 of 1602. So far you've had 2 assassination attempts.
That's as far as I've reached.
You've had 2 assassination attempts. You've got this weird solid white griffin showing up out of nowhere. You've got a blonde Indian, Stephen Strange, Nick Fury. You've got a Queen, presumably with consumption. You've got a Victor Von Doom, a mention of the Fantastic Four, observation of mutants existing, and the Spanish Inquisition. So, honestly, issue 1 and issue 2, a lot of exposition, just a lot of dialogue, a lot of explanation, not really a whole lot of action. It really starts to pick up in issue 3.
Right.
You know, the exposition's basically all done. All of our main characters are introduced. We meet 1 or 2 new characters. You know, there's some heavy arcs with a new character introduction coming up. We meet a narrator later on in the story, but as far as main characters go, we're done. So,
Oh, good. So we're done. We're done with the tale. We're going on to the show.
so that'll be the next installment, probably either this coming weekend or next Monday. I'll make sure Novel Bro is back. We'll get up with him and get his schedule going, and Ayrton and I will brush up on issues 2 and 3, and probably have some off camera, off stream conversations. Dillard speaks the truth, says Chad Middleton's. Griffins are basically fairies, and fairies are gay. You seem to be projecting a lot about homosexuality in my chat, Dillard.
You really are.
I love you, brother, but Church plays the
Fairies
Black
are
Cock
only
fairly
good
well.
in the German.
Negative Ghost Rider. That pattern's completely full. Chad, I disavow. You're all a bunch of Halseys, and that's all I got. Do you guys want to bring up anything on the... I do love you, Dillard, and that is completely homosexual. I love you in a very homosexual manner. But last I checked, you was a white boy, so, you know, that had nothing to do with me playing the Black Cock.
That's right.
That's right!
Yeah, we just took a real westward turn, didn't we, boys?
Well, I mean, I figure if Dillard and Chad are two of the three viewers we have, I can just cut this out later if we get popular. No thanks to them.
Right.
I knew it. Unsubbed and reported.
Assholes.
That's right. And we can't even go to Mixer now because Mixer shut down.
Yeah, it's okay. We can blame Ninja for that one.
What did he, PewDiePie say some gamer words?
Go right ahead, bro.
No, I'm saying, did Ninja PewDiePie it up and say some gamer words?
No, just his name alone. Just his name alone. Ninja, like, hey, guys, why aren't you flossing?
Oh, well, I mean, mainly because that's homosexual. But, anyway, first two issues, novel bro. What are your final thoughts, buddy?
On the series so far, I'm actually, despite certain small anachronisms, I like the direction it's going, and they have devoted at least some amount of time into researching it. So, would I recommend it to fantasy fans? Yes. To sci-fi fans? Yes. To comic book fans? Yes. To history fans? No.
Well, one thing that I will say wholeheartedly is at the end of this, we should take an extra hour on that episode and just correlate.
Absolutely.
No, we should take an extra hour on that episode and correlate each one of these issues to a series of Game of Thrones and do a side-by-side comparison. Because I'm pretty sure right around issue 5, where the comic book stories start to climax, and, the TV show just starts going downhill, I might even recommend it to some history fans over Game of Thrones.
In comparison to Game of Thrones, I'd have no other option but to recommend this.
Well, I mean, you could always go to Greenland. But
True. Build a colony.
That's right. That's not the Greenland I'm talking about, but absolutely. Anyway, Ayrton, final thoughts on 1602? Issues 1 and 2?
Couple issues.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of historical fiction and like the Marvel Elseworlds and stuff, these first couple issues will definitely get you hooked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, once you get past, the historical, like, references to every other type of character in the fucking Marvel universe, once you kind of accept the fact that they're just going to lean really heavy into that instead of just using the trope to create new characters, it's pretty much a must-have in any collection. My wife asked me about it. That's actually what spurred this discussion in this particular episode. She was like, "Do you have 1602? I saw that Neil Gaiman wrote it, and I'm a big fan of his work." And I was like, I think I do. And I walked over to my shelf with all my trade paperbacks on it, and I was like, Marvel 1602. I actually do have a copy of this in trade that I'll let somebody else open and read. Who'da fucking thunk it? But, I had gone through this once previously because I was actually intrigued because my first exposure to 1602 was the 2015 Angela Witchbreed Hunter series that was a tie-in to Secret Wars 2015, and I actually enjoyed it when I first read it, and I was like, let me check out the 1602 thing. It seems cool, and it made Angela Witchbreed Hunter a pile of dog shit. So that's buyer beware on that one. Even the auxiliary, too many shots. Auxiliary material. Easy for me to say. Even the auxiliary material that was released afterwards, 1602 A New World, 1602 Spider-Man, 1602 Fantastic Four, all of those stories, even though not as good as the initial 1602, much better than Angela Witchbreed Hunter.
Amen to that.
Chad Middleton, absolutely. If you ever want to request us to review anything at all, send it to me on Twitter at churchfailure. Email me church.of.failure@gmail.com. DM me on Discord, tag me on Discord, whatever you want. If you want us to review something, show suggestions, whatever. But we will definitely do things that the audience request because you guys show up to watch, and that's that's pretty much what it's all about. Like, we're gonna enjoy talking about comic books regardless. But if you guys want to see anything specific, Gotham by Gaslight is a fantastic story. I will never turn down an opportunity to reread that shit. But anyway, until next time, any one of you guys got anything to say before we get out of here, Novel Bro?
Just adding more to my Music for Historians playlist, and I'm still building my Music for Petitions playlist on YouTube. I'm still writing away, but nothing yet on that.
Well, I think you have a wrench, so drop a link. If you're in the YouTube chat right now, just go ahead and drop a link. But Ayrton, have you got anything before we get out of here?
Just good night, everybody.
Hey, I love you so much for that. All right. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you then. Gotham by Gaslight added to the list, and we will be back within the next calendar week to cover issues 3, 4, and possibly 5, depending on how early we get started and how much whiskey I have in my possession.